when it comes to rigging, this is where I was wrapped when I got Masterpiece with motion, because it took it to the next level where I pretty much gave up trying to rig anything with Blender. That was why I've never been into it, because I didn't have the patience at a desktop based app. But that was why suddenly, once you had VR and the tools are in VR, it just opens up a whole new level of ease of being able to do something that was sort of almost I put to the side. That was an impossible part of a workflow. I never thought I'd be able to do it until now. So it's amazing being able to see something you've sculpted and created, and then being able to rig it and then see it moving and even use it as an avatar.
Joining me now is VR artist Simon Clark, a prolific creator in the metaverse and creator of the Bone Museum in VR chat. Welcome, Simon.
Hi, how are you, Rafi?
So how long have you been a VR artist and sort of creator of VR worlds and characters?
Probably not that long, really. Probably really only started getting sort of serious into the making worlds, and probably within this year actually making VR chat worlds. But I've been doing VR sculpting and probably a bit of tilt brush art for probably the last couple of years, but got more into it as obviously COVID hit. You sort of have a lot more time to spend doing it, and find out you've got I never knew that I had a passion for creation in VR until you start, and it made sense with the hands-on aspect of it. Like, I've been an excavator operator for the last 25 years.
What's an excavator operator?
So that's driving heavy machinery in the construction industry. So something totally different. But I think in a way that's kind of helped me, having, the coordination with controlling machinery, and now having two controllers, it seemed to just all mesh and it came together. And it's where I really enjoy it.
Yeah. And what made you aware of this whole VR creative space, this sort of emerging space of 3D tools?
Well, initially, I bought an Oculus DK2 way back in the day when they first came out, and I think I was probably one of the first ones into New Zealand, and there was nothing obviously out there for it because it was just development. But I just saw that it would be useful because I've always been into like flight simulators on the PC as a gamer, and so I wanted to take it to the next level. And it was probably a couple of years before something was really usable in that sense. But then I started seeing these creative apps and was like, oh, that looks interesting, and it's kind of just went from there. I had no idea that I'd be into it before I started playing with them.
Right. So you went in with no expectations. It's not like you had the desire to solve a creative challenge that you had. You weren't really actually looking at the time for a solution to 3D creation. It hadn't even crossed your mind.
No, I was just basically toying with this program. I think it was Sculpt VR, might have been the first one, and I was just kind of like, "Oh, this is cool. It's like 3D material in virtual space, and then I can make stuff."
So how do you go about using VR tools? Like, how do you choose which ones to use, Simon?
It's still at the moment. It's an evolving process because there's so many tools out there, but it's pretty much trying to find, like, once you've got an idea for a world, then it's sort of looking at what each of the different apps will be the most efficient to get the result or the desired look that you want. And as far as sculpting, there's a lot of different ones. There's ones like tilt brush, which you can do for like foliage and that, because they've got more paint strokes. But when it comes to rigging, this is where I was wrapped when I got Masterpiece with motion, because it took it to the next level where I pretty much gave up trying to rig anything with Blender. That was why I've never been into it, because I didn't have the patience at a desktop based app. But that was why suddenly, once you had VR and the tools are in VR, it just opens up a whole new level of ease of being able to do something that was sort of almost I put to the side. That was an impossible part of a workflow. I never thought I'd be able to do it until now. So it's amazing being able to see something you've sculpted and created, and then being able to rig it and then see it moving and even use it as an avatar.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where motion has a lot of appeal, I guess, because it gives you that one-to-one relationship with the character and takes out the guesswork of where to place the bones. But what about the island you're about to show us? How has VR sculpting helped create a three-dimensional sort of space that you plan to walk around in VR chat.
Yeah, well, that's where it is so much easier than a desktop one, because as you're building it, and say you've got an idea in your head for that one, I had the island, and I was going to write, we want an island we can sort of walk around with some palm trees and an old fort. And with VR, the beauty of it is you can just scale it up to sort of look around and go, yeah, this is about what I expect it to be when we get it to where we want it to.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you can keep adding more details. It was same for like example with this dinosaur behind me. Like when I sculpted that, that's what really blew my mind as to how good VR is, because I wanted to 3D print it life size so I could scale it to life size and look at it and go, oh, there's not enough detail if I print this, so I need to add more. And it's the same with the island. If you scale it up and you're like, oh, it doesn't look as good, I need to add more detail or change the textures to match your scale as such when you bring it into VR chat.
What was your general impression, and what are your general tips for anyone creating avatars for VR chat? What should we look out for?
Unity's quite particular about the humanoid structure, I guess, of the skeleton as such, and it needs a certain requirements for the bone structures for it to actually work. Like it needs a neck bone, and they have to be attached. Whereas and fingers, there is a function in Unity where you can configure, and as long as you've got all your bones in motion named correctly, it makes your job a lot easier in Unity. If it does mess them up on import, which doesn't often happen, if you've got a nice humanoid shaped avatar, it'll be fine, chances are. But as soon as you start playing with avatars with, say, 3 fingers and 1 thumb, then it sort of gets confused as to which fingers it's supposed to be rigging.
So what did you use to rig these characters?
Masterpiece Motion.
Okay, and you did the skinning as well in Masterpiece Motion?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier doing this sort of thing in VR using motion. It's the only VR rigging tool out right now. You know, being able to reach in right into the middle of the mesh and draw your bones is a big plus, and being able to spin the whole scene around and scale up and down to get into the detail of skinning. Other than that, what is, you know, native to the VR experience, was there anything else about motion that helped? You know, any other tools that you kind of go to when you're rigging, like the mirror tool, the symmetry tool, for example?
Yes, the symmetry tool is good for getting. You can just basically, if you've got a, say, a 4-legged or a 4-limbed, like, well, I guess a human with an arm on each side and a leg on each side, you can just do 1 leg and 1 arm, and then symmetry, just click on that chain and it will go straight to the other side, which is saves on having to line up so you've got them perfectly symmetrical.
Yeah.
And probably the thing I probably find the most, it's almost satisfyingly fun and easy, is when you're doing the weight painting or the skinning, is like, say if you've got something where the bones, and some of them where I've sculpted, the bones are quite tightly close together, especially with the dinosaurs that I've been rigging, where you want to pick up that one but not this one. It's so good because you can just paint a bit and then just drag that arm out of the way, and everything that's attached will go, and you'll see where anything you've left behind is there. So it's all real time based, which makes it super simple because you can just get everything out of the way that you don't need. And that's where it just, I think it's a massive time saver.
One of the things that you don't think of as being fun is rigging. You know, I can tell you from working in the CG industry, and I know you mentioned earlier you don't come from a typical CG background. It's something that you kind of taught yourself with these VR tools. So you may not have ever experienced in a studio environment how, you know, convoluted and technically sort of mind-numbing it can be going through the rigging process, especially when you're up against a deadline.
Yep.
So it's great to hear that it was actually a fun process for you. That's quite a change, right? And that's the power of VR creative tools. When done right, they can really make transform the way you do things traditionally and make it just much more engaging and intuitive. So just to go back to you as a creator and the creative community, what's the creative community like? How has it been from your point of view, the whole VR space?
It's all the ones that I've found it's been a very encouraging and inspiring community, because I sort of got, I guess once I started getting into it last year, and you sort of get people comment, and then they lead you into other forums and that, and then there's discords and that, where sort of groups of artists hang out, and they're all using various ones, and others are using a whole lot, or some are particularly with one app. But it seems everyone is very supportive of each other, and we're always online, either helping each other out with Discord chats, trying to talk each other through any problems we have when we in the early days of starting these sort of, I guess, VR chat worlds that are completely made with VR creation tools.
Yeah, yeah. And you recently created something called the Bone Museum, which is a world inside VR chat. What is the Bone Museum?
It was initially, I had a couple of days spare where it was raining when I was still driving excavators, and I thought, oh, I'm going to start sculpting some dinosaurs, because I've obviously always liked dinosaurs, and they seem to be an easy thing to sculpt and print because it naturally lends itself to the printing material. And I thought, no, I want to put these online now so that other people can experience them at full scale. And then once I sculpt them, it's easiest to sculpt with a mirror plane on, so that they look very symmetrical and almost robotic to a point. And that was where I was like, masterpiece. Motion, because then I can rig them, and even if I wasn't going to animate them initially, the plan was, because it's so easy to rig and skin and masterpiece motion, I could just quickly rig something and then pose it, export it, so that they all had unique individual poses as such, without having them all just standing there like they'd just come out of a printer.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of gone on from there. And then I started dabbling in the animation of it. And then now I've got a few animated ones in there, which is just, it makes the whole place come alive a lot more.
You recently updated the Bone Museum with a new piece. Tell us a little bit about that piece and how you went about making it.
Okay, so that was an original piece. That was one of the first pieces. It was a T-Rex skeleton I made for the Bone Museum. I initially made the original model in Sculpt VR, and then I had to decimate it because it was something like 19 million polygons or something. It was ridiculous. So I decimated, then I took it into Masterpiece Creator, and there I gave it some normals and some UV mapping, and gave it kind of used a rock texture, but colored it so the bone color, which is where I'm absolutely just loving the texturing that you can do in Masterpiece Creator, because you can paint so many different layers over, and they all show up in VR chat, which is what kind of makes this dinosaur a lot better than all the rest of mine now. So I'm going to have to go back and redo all my other ones now, because the rock effect on the bones makes it really look like a fossil. And then once I animated it and rigged and animated it in motion, so it's standing there and it's roaring and leaning around, it's like the fossil just comes to life.
Mm-hmm.
It's been pretty exciting.
Oh, that's great. I mean, if any of the viewers want further inspiration, they should definitely check out the Bone Museum and find you on VR chat. I mean, who doesn't like dinosaurs, right? And being able to be immersed in a museum like that is awesome. So, are you still driving excavators?
No. I stopped driving them a couple of months ago. I wanted to try and follow up a bit of a career and either doing something along the lines of making worlds for VR chat, and also getting into my 3D printing, because I've had a few requests to do specific prints, so I needed a bit more time to do that. So I'm sort of a bit of all sorts at the moment.
Well, that's really exciting. It sounds like by embracing these VR tools and sort of the lower barrier to entry, you're able to carve out a whole new creative outlet for yourself, to the point where you've kind of left your old career and are moving into this whole new creative space. I mean, if that doesn't say, this whole space is exciting and it's got opportunities for creators, I don't know what does. So really exciting. I can't wait to see what else you create in the months and years ahead, Simon.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your time.
No worries.